Welcome back to Briggs on Books, our international talk show where we talk to authors, creators, publishers, editors, anything that has to do with getting a book out. So many of our viewers have a book. Anybody could write a book, right? But few people could finish writing a book, and that's who we're going to talk to today, some authors who finished, who got done, were able to put their pencil down and move to the next step. I'm in the first category, by the way. My books are just in the computer. They haven't come out yet, but hopefully they will see the light of day soon. Our next, our guest that's coming up here, he didn't just write a book and get it published. He's done it over and over and over again. And our guest is Chaplain Patrick Day. Welcome, Pat. Welcome to our show. Boy, I was looking you up. I told you we're running late because I got so intrigued by your Amazon, you know, the what people write about you and say about you and stuff. But you have something like 8 books out there?
Yeah, 9 actually. This is my 9th book.
9th book. And this one just came out. When did it come out?
It came out in the end of January of 2024.
Yeah. Now, by the way, the book is called Finding the Safest Place on Earth. Well, I want to know where that is for sure, Chaplain. And I was just talking to you about your work, what you do. It's just fascinating. You reach out, Chaplain, you minister to people in where?
In Minnesota, in county jails. I've been a volunteer chaplain at a county jail. I've been dealing with the inmates of the Wright County Jail for since 2005. And I go in there and meet with inmates on an individual basis. And I meet with them a minimum of a half an hour, some up to an hour and a half. And they're not one-time meetings. I meet with the same people, sometimes over a year. And I get to know them real well. So the book that I wrote, Finding the Safest Place on Earth, it's the subtitle is Jack Overcomes an Addiction. And Jack is a fictional character, but he really isn't. He's really the compilation of a few thousand people that I've dealt with. I've also gone into county jails and Adult and Teen Challenge. It's a rehab facility, Christian rehab facility, and I've dealt with a lot of addicts there. And the people that I talk with, for the men, 90% of them are in there for drugs, either selling, using, distributing, transporting, or what they did was as a result of using drugs. For women, 95% are in there because of drugs, mainly using. So I talk with those people, I get to know their stories, and I get to know that overcoming an addiction is, well, I say in my book in the introduction, it's like pushing a rock up a steep hill. Yeah. And you finally get to the top of the hill and you take a breath in and then you relax, and then the rock comes and rolls back over you all the way down the hill. Each day you start your day that way. So that's what addictions are like. And if someone helps you push the rock up, it's easier.
Yeah.
And if you put the rock in a wheelbarrow and 2 people pushing up, it's easier yet. And if you've got God on top of the hill and he starts pulling, that's when you can be sober lifetime.
Right.
And it's a challenge. Of the people that I deal with, unless they get mentors and are able to lean on someone, 80% of them are going to be back in jail for drugs within a year.
I know some these organizations, AA or something, you have a sponsor. Is that what you mean by the 2 people pushing the rock up the hill?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. That's for alcoholics and NA, Narcotics Anonymous. The real key to that is the partner, the coach, the mentor that they link you with that helps you push that rock up the hill.
Now, is it possible to get over an addiction without that guy on top helping you pull the rock up the hill?
Yes. It's you can do it by force of will. My father, for example, was he drank a lot and he fought a lot. And my mother said to him, Joe, you either got to stop drinking and stop fighting or I'm going to leave you. Boom. He stopped drinking that day.
Wow.
Never had another drink. he just did it by force of will. It's what's known as a dry drunk. Someone who stopped drinking, but they never got to the reasons why they were drinking in the first place. And people like that exchange one addiction for another.
Yeah.
He ended up being a hypochondriac, which is a bit of an addiction.
Yes.
But yes, there are people that can do it, but they're very few and far between.
Right.
Most people need some help from someone. And the more help you get, the more likely you are to succeed.
Most of us cannot imagine what it would be, what it's like to be under addiction and what it does to you every single day. But I would say probably all of us know somebody who's going through that, who is addicted.
Oh, yes. And you may know of people that you don't know that they're addicted. They can be closet drinkers or closet users. There are people that like to refer to themselves as functional drug addicts or functional alcoholics, which means they can go about life while using drugs and using alcohol. And there's a small percentage of them that don't have that addiction gene in them. And maybe they can do that. But again, very, very few, far between. And what generally happens is the drinking ramps up, the drug use ramps up. All of a sudden, you've got a person losing a marriage, losing a job, and for, with fentanyl, things like that, losing their life.
Yeah. Now the book, I'm going to keep dragging you in other directions, but I got to force myself to stay on this book because this subject is fascinating to me, and your knowledge of it and your ability to reach people. But the book itself, Finding the Safest Place on Earth, it's a novel?
Yes, it's a novel. It's got two main characters. There's periphery characters, but the two main characters are Jack, who's an alcoholic, hopeless drunk as he calls himself, and he can't come out of his addiction. There's for addicts, there's 1,000 promises and 1,000 broken promises.
Right.
It's like tombstones in a graveyard, and he just can't. He can't break it, and he's in Ireland, and he ends up in a church, St. Finbarr's in Cork that I've been in, and along comes this person, sits down beside him in the chapel. His name is Manny, and Manny becomes his mentor. And without Manny, Jack can't make it. And even with Manny, it's a hard slog. There's starts, there's coming off the wagon. I've dealt with people in jails that have been sober for 3 years, 5 years, and they're in jail again. And I said, what happened? They said, it was going so well, and then I had some trouble. And a lot of the using drugs or alcohol doesn't have to do with the pleasure of it, although there's part of it, but it's escaping. I deal with people that come from hugely dysfunctional families. They've been sexually abused by their mother, sexually abused by their father, sexually abused by their brothers. They've been in street gangs. They've been beaten up. They're the wrong color in the wrong place at the wrong time. And one of the ways to deal with a life like that is to be high. Then you don't care. So for a lot of the people, the addicts, it's an escape. Their use is an escape.
In the book, can you tell us where it goes? Can you tell us what happens or what the message is? Don't want to spoil it for anyone.
Well, yes. At the end, I'll tell you something, but we'll run out of time. Okay. So the way the book starts is a person that's having trouble with his marriage. He's AWOL with his kids. He loses a job through a downsizing, and he's been told that he's going to be replaced by a company that bought out his company. Then he gets a phone call from his mother who'd walked out on him like 35 years before.
Wow.
And she tells him that his father was in a car accident on a freeway, and it was such a big accident, it was on CNN News. And he tunes into that, and it's just too much for him. He hadn't had anything to drink for 6 months, and he lost his job, and he lost his father in a period of 2 hours. And so he goes over to the cabinet, and he drinks 3 fingers of whiskey, and then he has another 3 fingers, and then he has actually 2 fingers. Then he has another 2 fingers. Each finger is a shot.
Yeah.
So, and he has another 2, so he has 6 shots, and he walks out of his office. He was clearing things out, and when he leaves, he just says, whoever comes in can clear my stuff out. And that starts his downfall. And he finally gets another job. He almost loses his wife. Then when he meets Manny, then Manny gives him some direction in his life. And have you got that chart?
Oh, yes. So into your story, I forgot that I'm in charge of clicking on things here. Here you go. It says, where are you at the top?
Okay. So on the right-hand side is Jesus, and on the left-hand side is the fallen world. So everyone in between is a believer. And so I'll go into a jail, and I'll say to them, how many of you are believers in Christ? And most of the hands will go up because that's what they signed up for. They know I'm a chaplain. And then I'll say, how many of you were believers when you committed your last crime? And hands don't go up. And I just say, look, you're not telling me the truth. I can stand here for a long period of time in silence. And then some hands will go up and more hands. So I said, most of you were believers when you committed your last crime. What happened to having all your sins forgiven? What happens about being saved? What happens about not having to sin again? And they look at me, and I say it in such a way that it's not criticism, but they look at me. It's the question they've been asking themselves hundreds of times. And then I tell them, depends on where you're standing. So on that chart, if you're standing on the right-hand side where you're closer to Jesus, that means there's more of Jesus than there is of you. And the closer you get to Jesus, the more of Jesus there is. And then you drift. When they get out of jails, they drift. And when they drift and they move over on the other side, then there's more of the world in them than there is of Jesus. And the farther they move to the left, the more dangerous they are. It is for them. And that's when people start drinking again. They start stealing again. They get high and they murder someone. So the message to them is get on the other side as fast as you can. And so the rest of my talk, say to an adult and teen challenge or a jail, is how do you do that? And it's really not a big secret. Read the Bible, pray, have a Christian mentor, do service, do things for other people instead of yourself. Going to church, getting around other believers, getting around people who aren't drinking. And so that's the premise of this book. It's Jack ended up over towards the side of the fallen world. And he would fight and he'd get in the side where he's nearer to Jesus, and then something happened. And boom, he moves back. Yep, it's the story of the inmates in jail. They got the time in the jail. They go to all the religious programs, and they say, Pat, I'm going to make it this time. And I tell them, well, actually, you aren't. Not unless you do something different than what you've done before. I don't know if you've the saying that it was actually Albert Einstein came up with it. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results.
Different outcome, yeah. Now, we're going to run out of time in a minute, Patrick, but I got to ask you a couple things. Who should read this book?
Well, that's a good question. Well, addicts should read the book. Drug addicts, alcoholics, people that are into pornography, gambling. That list of addicts goes on and on and on.
Yeah.
Food can be an addiction. Sex can be an addiction. But those people who have addictions and they want to get out of them, this would be a good book to read. For Christians who just want a closer walk with Jesus, this would be a good book to read. And it's kind of a mystery in a way. You know, where does Manny come from? Why is he involved with Jack? And it gradually unfolds as the story's going on. And Jack, why is he having such a hard time stopping to drink? And it gradually unfolds as the story goes on. It's really a bit of a story of how to get along when life isn't going your way. What happens when you lose a job? What happens when your spouse gets cancer? What happens when you get in a terrible car accident? You know, how do you handle that? And this book gets into that. And it's a bit of a story how we all need a mentor. We all need someone. And it might be a spiritual partner. It might be a friend. Just someone that you can talk to and they'll listen to you. And they'll hold you accountable.
It might be somebody who sits down beside you in a chapel.
What's that?
It might be somebody who just comes and sits down beside you in a chapel. Now,
you've read the book.
now let me ask you this, because it sounds like it's a story of hope because it shows there is a way out. I assume, hopefully, that's how it ends, that there is a way out, and this book could kind of show you the way. So maybe not just addicts, but their families and friends. Like I said, we all know somebody.
Yes. And that was the other thing. Or people that know addicts, or people that love them, people live with them. By the way, Mike, you just summed up the book in one sentence very wisely.
I should do a review. I'll put that in my review.
Yes, it is a book of hope.
Yeah.
It's a book of hope. I've dealt with people that have called themselves a hopeless drunk.
Yeah.
And I said, you know, on your own, you're a hopeless drunk.
Yeah.
And I got bad news for you. You'll always be a hopeless drunk. You'll always be addicted. An addiction is like diabetes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, some people have like an addictive gene. And so I'll say, you'll be addicted till the day you die. And they look at me and they say, what's the hope? And I said, change your addiction. Change from alcohol and drugs to Jesus.
There you go.
And the book, it's a Christian book, but if a person is of another religion, then the bar on the right could be Allah, could be Jehovah, Yahweh. I can tell you one thing, Mike. This is not a book for atheists.
Okay.
An atheist won't like this book.
Okay. Or maybe after they read it, they won't be atheists anymore.
There, you just named another category that should read the book.
Chaplain, we're so overtime. I'm getting the stink eye from my producers here, so I want to have you back. I could talk to you for hours, but unfortunately, people only watch for about 10 minutes and they switch to something else, you know. So, but thank you so much for coming. Any last thoughts?
Can I give you a final thought?
Yes, please.
Okay. At the end of the book is a chapter called The Final Lesson. And that's it's the last point, after which Jack is able to stay sober for the rest of his life. It's the culmination of all his struggles. Now, do you want to know what that final lesson is?
Yes.
But I can't tell you because we just ran out of time.
Just ran out of time.
You'll have to finish the book you got there, and other people will have to buy a copy of the book. You can buy it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, any online bookseller.
Okay.
If it is not in a store, you can ask them to get it, and so forth. So the book's available. You want to know what the final lesson is? Get the book.
Yeah. And Chaplain, as you know, because you watch this show sometimes, I'll say to our viewers, don't buy one of these. Go buy 5 of them and give them out. People will love this. You give somebody a book, they have it forever. They don't read it and throw it away. So it'll be in their house or they'll pass it on to someone else. And this is the kind of book that should be given away, a book of hope.
It is.
Thank you so much, Chaplain. And we will be back with another author right after this. So for our viewers, please don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, oops. Hang on, let me kill that.